Oh,
Are we on?
are
Shit.
we on?
We're on. And I stopped with a button. I hit a button. Okay. We're all over the place. We're starting off. We missed last week. We're out of sync. We don't know what we're doing anymore.
Oh yeah, that's right. The holiday.
The holiday. Wake up and deliver with John and Matt back again. I got to sit up straight.
I should be like, the
Yeah, party on. Holding the mic up. Maybe I gotta zoom in on this one. I think I gotta do a little zoom in. We'll get off camera here.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, just you wanna get in there and make it like, oh, look at this. This is gonna be personal.
We had too much of the midsection showing.
Oh,
We gotta raise it now. We're all over.
I was gonna say, like, mine's a little bit easier, as you can clearly tell. I've got like the proper post. Actually, I thought you bought the same stand that I have, so I don't know what's happening.
I did, but I got this phobia where if the camera is plugged in, I feel like it can watch me, so I always unplug it and I turn it so nobody can see me.
That's why straight up, like legit, you just go with like the lens cap, paf.
Got the lens cap too, man. You got to have it unplugged. It could be listening. There could be other things going on. You just you never know. Anyways, start off another week. We're going to get John's reaction here because we're going to get off track and get reacted ourselves. We're going to go full screen and we're going to bring it on stage. John, the first line is the most important. Full stop. Too many otherwise smart people bury the most valuable part of the message at the end. Delete everything except for what is necessary. Good writing is clear, conversational, and as short as possible.
So this one is funny because I know that we've never talked about this, but this goes to show you, like, now when, I'm not a micromanaging type boss or anything like that, but in my past, this became such a problem, like for communications and stuff like that. And, huge emails all over the place, that I actually took the time to develop a couple of page document about the quality of like people's, writing and like using some of these different strategies. And the biggest thing with it is, and that kind of aligns with what you wrote there, is be super clear about like what this is about. You know what I mean? Not just the content or the subject, but like, for example, hey, sending this over just to let you know, I need you to help me make a decision. We've got a problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like being very clear and deliberate about like what this is about, not like, let me explain everything. Oh, and by the way, help me.
Should be like you should know everything by just reading the subject line.
The subject, or at least be clear. Like people definitely will benefit. For example, like if you send them a note and you're like, sending this over, need you to help, like need your help with a decision, or hey, sending this your way, I'm making this decision, FYI. Like, you know what I mean? These are very different emails, but they could still have more or less the same content.
If you don't open this email, you'll have 7 years of bad luck.
Oh, there you go. And then like, the people too that wait all the way to the end to be like, and this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Like,
it's the worst when you start from the bottom.
Yeah, you're like, oh no! It's like it's gone. I didn't even get to the meaty part yet. I triggered it.
Or the worst one was the back in the, I don't know if you probably did in school because we're similar in age, where the first instruction was read everything, and then at the end it says do nothing, just put your pencil down. Everybody starts doing all the instructions because they didn't read everything.
They didn't actually get till the end. Yeah, I had a few teachers that tried to get a little bit cute like that for sure.
To me, it didn't make a difference because I didn't do it either way. So it just played into my attitude.
They're like, oh, and Matt crushed this test because every question said not to do it first time you walked out because you weren't going to answer them anyway.
Yes, I'm done. I'm ending this in. Anyways, on that note, yeah, I mean, well, we're going to have a few topics, 2 weeks worth of goodies. Lots going on, like we were talking about before we went live. Maybe I'll lead into it. A lot of friction right now happening in the United States. Over 6,000 was it in California alone? Drivers got their CDLs revoked because they wouldn't pass the language proficiency tests, which is a lot of people are cheering, a lot of people are questioning it. The one thing that I've kind of seen over and over again that I kind of agree with is that is such a very subjective test. That you don't know if I'm administrating or John's administrating, what level of understanding what proficiency is different. So I found that very interesting. So a lot of people have been talking about that. The one thing I made a comment about this too, because there's a lot of people have been talking about it in Canada as well. You have to know English to be able to drive. I don't know, in Europe and all over the rest of the world, people have multiple languages. It's not unilingual, and yet they are able to drive across these countries and still get through. We have Polish people in Spain, Polish people in Turkey, and they're still able to do it. Swedes, English, Scottish, Irish, all over Europe, and they're still able to figure out the road signs. I don't know if English proficiency in that sense is the way they're describing is really the sword to die on, but it is making an impact on what is going in our world. So we thought we'd talk about it. That's my little 2-minute take on it.
Yeah, I do think that there's a little bit of irony that this thing finally rolls around just as the world is almost getting to like the universal translator state of technology of like, it doesn't really matter what you'd write in or like what you'd speak, because like, the tech can kind of bridge it for you. But you're right. The whole idea is that, people need to be able to, for example, speak with inspectors. And I think that's obviously kind of like the crux of it, more or less. I think more often than not, people can fill out the form or would understand, a structured form, because whether you're doing it in Spanish versus English versus French versus German, like the concepts of what would be needed would be the same. The road signs is a funny one, because if you look up like good design on a road sign or any kind of visual management sign,
there's no words.
There's no words. Like if you have to lean on words, it's like you failed. You failed on your visual management. You know what I mean? So
and that goes with any kind of transportation, whether it's boats, trains, airplanes, anything that has words on it, because it takes you time to process what you're seeing. A quick symbol, if it's a grade of 15 degrees or if it's a steep hill or whatever, looking at the sign, you instantly know you have to adjust your. But if you add words to it, it makes it muddy. And it's not as clear anymore, right? So
for sure. And actually, funny enough, went through that even personally, not obviously in a commercial context, but when I was in Portugal over the summer, they had a few signs that looked exceptionally similar. And they had words on them, and I was like, what does this mean? Is it like danger of falling rocks? Is this like tourist view? Like
my meta glasses are telling me danger, turn around.
Danger. Yeah, it was very wild. I actually like my girlfriend was driving, and I'm like sitting there being like, hey, what are these signs? They're like actually coming up all the time. And then you find out that they're supposed to call out like potential tourist attractions, so it wasn't really much of a concern. But like they had, it was just out like, now I'm going to say brown sign, and everyone who's been to Portugal is going to be like, oh, those are the tourist signs. But it was like brown sign with like the certain image that looked like rocks, like, falling. But then it would like make you look like it was something to do with water, but everywhere they would show up would be like dry as a bone. So it's like, are they sometimes wet and sometimes dry? Was it used to be wet? Like really didn't know what was going on. So I had to totally break out Gemini, actually, oddly enough, and be like, what is happening to figure it out. So yeah. That said, though, that's where conventions are super important, right? Like if you're in operations, logistics, like anything where you're doing repeated stuff and you're working with different groups and stuff like that, super straightforward signage, consistency, and repeatability are things that you can do really easily, and take advantage of things that are already established in society, right? Like don't make the good sign red. Like you're probably better off making it green or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
thumbs up, is a good thing. The other, the other way is not a good thing. Don't try to change that, right?
Exactly. There's a really funny TED Talk. I butchered his name, but like I'll have to find it. Maybe I'll put it in the comments. But there's a really funny TED Talk by this kind of like marketing / sales guy, and he's talking about how insane it is that every airport like is essentially doing the same thing, but they all use their own signage and their own approach to it, because he's like, all of a sudden you're walking, it's beautiful, you're feeling good, all of a sudden the colors change, the pictures change, you don't know what's going on. It's super hilarious. I'll try to find it and post it, but
standardization does help with everything that you pretty much do, like from the supply chain all the way through to even the engineering of objects. That's why all USBs are the same. Imagine having like 16 different cables. Again, that's why they standardize it all, right? Same as trucks. Imagine every manufacturer had their own wheel size and all that. And the same thing applies to signs. Same as the symbol for hot when you're approaching a truck engine, because they're built all over the world. that signage has to be the same when you're working on the truck. It's not going to have words in there because you don't know where that truck's going to end up or where it's bought. So that's why the symbols are that way. So I thought that was kind of an interesting hot topic that's going on. The other piece that's everybody's really focused on, and it's kind of goes with the times, is the amount of fraud that is happening, and then the fraud of fake identities, trucks being stolen, trailers being stolen, and it's happening on both sides of the border because people are not doing due diligence. A lot of people are cutting corners, hiring people that they should really be doing a proper vetting for, and that goes from the warehouse all the way up through. There's an increase of that happening. I think even to the point where even I think it was ProLogix was saying that there's been a downturn on warehousing in the last little bit because of excess, but also there's been a lot of issues. So there are a lot of people are just saying I'm not dealing with warehousing anymore.
Oh, like all kinds of people. I mean, I think that could jump into something I wanted to bring up next. But I mean, to kind of at least round out my last point on this is that it's funny because on the one hand, everyone's pulling out people saying, hey, but your proficiency in English is not good enough. We're pulling you off the road. You're a risk. But then the problem is that like when you look at pretty much anywhere, but especially in the US and stuff like that, and you look at the percentage of carriers, like, fleet size, number of drivers, blah, blah, blah. It's wildly dominated by, 5 trucks or less, 10 trucks or less, or whatever. So these people are going to get super impacted. And will the roads be any better by having to give more chances, more miles, more opportunity, I'll put it that way, to people that are actually worse drivers? You know what I mean? That have had maybe more accidents, that are prone to speeding more, that for example now are going to be working more, because the thing is you can't just evaporate 6,000 drivers out of the sort of transportation network and think it's not going to have an impact.
I'll throw a different context in for you. French Canadians, right? They're sometimes their English is not the best, and for the rightful reasons, and they have driver's licenses that are valid in the United States, and they don't speak the best of English. But they're good drivers. They understand the signs. They understand what to do with the trucking, and they have every right to be on the road. And there's a question of them being allowed to be in the United States, and that becomes a bit of a challenge, right? So there was talk about even the reciprocity of driver's licenses being revoked between Canada and the United States. Recently, there was a bill passed by a Texan lawmaker, which I found very interesting. If that goes all the way through, people say it's saber rattling, but at the same time, it's not just a threat from the north. It's not even just a threat from the south. It's also internal challenges they have. The amount of, and not to say that they're doing the right thing, but the amount of the simple processes that they had in place that they ignored. I think they recently revealed there was like 60,000 drivers in the U.S. that had the last name of no name. And this was uncovered. I think it was on the Freight Waves. They were talking about it. And it was basically like, John, no name. And they had a driver's license, which is ridiculous. That there's a process in place that should have stopped all that. Like, you should not just give it up because there's an emergency. You know what I mean? So I think that was a bit of the challenge too.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, have to wait and see where it goes. But again, like I said, ironic that it is becoming a thing at the least needed time in history, probably. Like, you know what I mean? Like I could probably pull out chat or Gemini, and you could probably speak to me in Polish, and I could probably get back to you and just answer it.
And in French, and I'll be like, yeah, we got it.
There you go.
The Meta glasses now will live translate for people, and are even doing it for deaf people, reading it into so they can hear it and see what's going on as well. So there's technology has been solving a lot of this problem. To your point, you really don't need, they're talking about talking to dolphins in the next little bit. You know what I mean? It's getting that crazy. But let's move on to the next subject.
Wait, sorry, my lad. Now I've got a joke about it though. Okay, and then we'll move on. So imagine though, on the one side, you've got billions of dollars being essentially poured into all of these little tech startups and stuff, and people doing all kinds of vibe coding, which is essentially you can't really speak code. You don't really know how to code, but we're going to reward you for it. And on the other side, it's like, oh, you drive a truck. And I don't like the way that you speak to me. No, your license is gone. Anyways, that was my last point on that one.
That is interesting. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. Speaking of vibe coding, a lot of these startup AI audio kind of conversation I think it's going to take a big tumble in the next little bit. Even there's some indicators that it's being quickly absorbed by the chat GPTs and the ones that own the LLMs, where they're just taking on we talked about this for weeks, taking those features, just making it a core process where there's no need to buy it. It's going to be part of chat GPT. The other crazy thing before you go, I don't know if you read this, for every $5 that ChatGPT spends, it only makes $1 so far. So it's at a 5 times loss currently.
Oh, dude, sometimes the AI stuff, we talk about that a lot. But look, the reality is so much of this is like lipstick on a pig, because the thing is everyone's pretending like there's some AI solution and they're just using someone else's product. The vast majority of people are just using sort of, OpenAI or Google or Anthropic. But now you're starting to see people using like Microsoft products. You're seeing people using Salesforce type products or whatever as well, also branding it as their own. Anyways, I agree with you. I think the bubble's going to burst on a lot of these things, because like one other story that I want to bring up with you, I think that this, these big enterprises or big organizations, unfortunately, like it helped them kind of get notoriety and it helped the movement of people getting interested, but they're going to need to gobble all that up because they need the revenue.
Yeah.
So that's on that. My next point, we'll just tie it to the drivers. And I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but just kind of like, we'll just like bring this back together so people have a little bit more of a context. So
let's hear
the other big thing coming out in about 10 days or so, 12 maybe.
Days. That's very specific.
12. Thing is 12 actually. November 1st is the new tariffs that President Trump has applied on heavy vehicles.
Yeah.
Again, so imagine thousands and thousands of drivers being taken off the road that are most likely disproportionately impacting smaller carriers. And then the second part is going to be, oh, you need new trucks? Oh, you want to expand your fleet? Oh, well, everything you have to buy now is more expensive. So now you're having people going down, equipment costs going up in a market where everybody is trying to get more volume. I don't think that that's like to me, that doesn't seem like a good collision of things, especially going into this part of the year.
You already see a lot of it, and then it's happening already. Aftermarket parts for a lot of these trucks that are not to the same standards because they're cutting corners, because a lot of this stuff is being tariffed and they're subpar, but it's what they can afford. Used vehicles that probably aren't in the best shape are being bought, reused again, increasing maintenance costs, increasing wear and tear, increasing breakdowns on the road. All this is just going to increase with all this that is happening.
Exactly.
Trucks that are bring back the American trucks into the U.S., manufacturing, maybe, but I don't know if you saw, I forget the how you say the gentleman's name from NVIDIA, the CEO, he said it the best. He goes, a couple years ago, China was 85% of everything that we were doing. Now they're at 0%, but it has not slowed them down.
This thing, while at the same time, Singapore has magically taken over that 95% position.
But at the same time, Huawei, however you pronounce it, they have their own chips.
Huawei.
They've started creating their own chips. They started doing all these things. Yeah. All we have done is enabled China and the rest of the world to be less dependent on us, not more dependent on us. Mm-hmm. And less trade makes you more independent, not intra-dependent, which becomes, I think, counterintuitive what the outcome ought to be. If you bring all the manufacturing back home, it's great, but then you create other people that are no longer dependent on you and don't need you, and then will do it their own way. Mm-hmm. And then that creates friction.
Definitely.
What other topic you had? Because we're that's a cliffhanger that we're kind of stopping there.
No, that's cool. Okay. I'm saying that's cool. We'll stop there because you're right. We did talk about that one a couple of weeks ago, but that's just more, food for thought when people are looking at the market and are making decisions. Keep it in mind. Always keep yourself kind of current of what's going on. What I thought was interesting, and it's a little bit of a play now. Look at this. Look at how well this is like kind of flowing today. So another couple of things I thought was really interesting was two things. So we all know about our challenges with Canada Post. So Canada Post got their own problems, but they did go back to work with rotating strikes. Why? Because they saw that the full-blown strike was utterly ineffective. Yeah, just it was a bad strategy. Honestly, it's not the way they need to go about that. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. When you look at a couple of other similar organizations around the world, right? You've got two things that caught my attention. One was Australia Post planning to roll out 500 new EVs. And then a little bit closer to home was the USPS that's actually activating 14 new sortation centers all at the same time on November 1st. They're predominantly in California, which is kind of interesting because obviously it shows a little bit more strategy from maybe their approach. Why? Because California is the most densely populated state in the United States. So if you actually want to have...
Is it?
It is, yeah. So if you want to actually have... If you look at the US and the two biggest places that you really need to be able to do well, one is California because the state itself has the highest population of any state. And then the entire sort of like Northeast region, like when you're thinking Pennsylvania, Jersey, like all of this stuff, Massachusetts and whatever. Yeah. Well, yeah. But the reason why you want to be up there is because they actually have the highest population density per square mile. So those two markets become really anchoring. One is for highly effective, like really dense. The other one is just, lots of people. Because then you got like nothing in between.
I know you love the post comments, and post is usually your favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but I think it was Denmark was doing, and there was a suggestion that Canada should follow suit, is do away with the post in general, like mail service. Get rid of it. They're saying it's not worth it. Nobody really wants it. Nobody's anxious about mail. If you're going to get a letter, like you're going to ask for it. Like get rid of that whole service. Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, the concept is, for me anyway, is not so much about like mail versus parcel or whatever, but the reality is it's item to consumer, right? Item to customer, whether it happens to be a piece of like letter mail, whether it happens to be in a box. Because I do think that there's something kind of inherently interesting in the fact of like you've got parcel carriers that will like essentially take a poly bag with like the smallest little trinket in it, but like, oh, if it's a document, it's like offhand or whatever like that. You know what I mean? So to me, I do think that mail in itself is just something that has probably run more of its life than anything else. I mean, the reality is very few people want to send something that slowly. You know what I mean? Like where it's just a letter, just kind of with a stamp and like let it trickle through the system when, you have everything from phones, computers, like, everything is instantaneous communication. The biggest customer or the biggest sort of like pillar holding up mail systems is very often the government, who kind of continues to do forms and continues to do other types of communication that way. Like imagine, I think
how many times do you have to get that CRA, which is Canada Revenue pin that you need to be able to log in? Or, oh my goodness, they won't email it to you. They won't do it any other way. You got to get it in mail, and mail's on strike. So good luck trying to do your taxes.
Actually, the funny thing with that, it's like when you go to log in, it's like, do you want to use your bank to log in, or do you want to use the letter? It's like if I ever saw this letter, it was once, and it was a long time ago. So that letter is nowhere near.
I'm not gonna lie, I use the letter.
No, you don't.
I do. I have it to my dad. I was gonna show it, but then it has my code.
Yeah, it's got you do that. Like, I mean, someone's gonna raid your bank account in like 2 seconds. Anyways,
I even have a fake piece of paper to show at this point. There's too many documents on my desk.
the funny thing though, so like to me about the thing with the mail or whatever, is just that it's your more sort of, I'll say like either community or society connected service, right? Like, so I do believe in the fact that I think, having an option that's not completely just a private for pure high profit is valuable to societies and communities. And I think especially when you look at countries like Canada, when you think of like, for example, like the center of the US, like even countries like, Scotland or Germany, for example, like, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, of course, there's always these dense areas, but if you really want to get stuff everywhere, not a lot of people want to do that. So I think that there is value and balance in having sort of a crown type corporation.
We are speaking it from a place of privilege, that being along the 401 corridor where like 80% of the Canadian population lives.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's somebody in Thunder Bay or Medicine Hat, Alberta, or even, Whitehorse. I don't want to say the territory because I don't know if I got it right. Is it?
I always get those two confused.
Me too. Yellowknife is Northwest Territories. Yukon's Whitehorse, right? they depend on it because it's the only thing that kind of flies in and goes on the plane and everything else. So there's some communities that definitely do need it, but at the same time, you can probably get rid of it for the most part for everybody else as a crowd corporation.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think, when you start seeing stuff like the USPS, like these guys, so like, they got all of these new centers going up. Each one of these, like they've got all kinds of sorters in these facilities. They can do 7,000 packages per hour. It's more than doubling their capacity. And it kind of puts them in the same type of performance that you would normally see with like a FedEx and UPS. My point so much isn't on like USPS or whatever, but like this is what I've been saying for a while is really happening in the market, is that for all of the talk about like alternative carriers and stuff like that, I definitely believe there's opportunity in places. I don't think that there's enough volume for all of the ones that are there today to continue to survive. Because the thing is that Amazon's, UPS, FedEx, USPS, Canada Post, Purolator, they have such a big organization, and they're the ones with actually like large scale infrastructure. They need to keep gobbling up more and more and more in order to be able to sort of stay, well, one, relevant, and two, like solvent, you know what I mean? Like to keep making money. And I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on smaller sort of service providers, just because of the fact that like, there's not one of them. I don't care who it is and how much VC money they have. There's not one of them that essentially like popped up 14 facilities that each one doubles their capacity, that'll go from like off to on, within a few weeks. Like that's just not happening. And they'll never get the money for that.
And the majority of them are going to close down in the next little bit anyway. And a lot of them are struggling, and it's like you said, lipstick on a pig for a lot of it. Anyways, down to the last 3 minutes, John. What are we going to finish off here? What cool story that's going on?
Okay. Sorry. So the last one, DoorDash making a partnership with Waymo to deliver your food. So imagine you've got like Tesla that's highly focused on the robo taxis, both personal use and their fleet. You've got Uber making relationships, Lyft making relationships with autonomous vehicles, and now DoorDash getting to the point where like, hey, we'll have the Waymo pull up. We're going to get, the person at McDonald's to drop it in the trunk and drive that to your house. You'll feel totally comfortable coming out of your house to grab it from the unmanned vehicle and go there. But I really think it's interesting to see this gig economy that was built up on people being available all the time and willing to quite frankly work for sometimes really stupid amounts of money, still being too expensive, that now it's like, nah, we're going to use the autonomous vehicle.
What bothers me the most about this is not that they're doing it. I think it's good. It's just the design of the car. Like at least make the car autonomous and looking cool or something. Not make it look like an actual car that still needs 4 people in it. You know what I mean? Like make it.
Well, I mean, I definitely think that they could switch around at least like the front 2 seats once it's, so you could have like the 4 people facing each other. Like I think that's what Tesla's looking at doing with the robo taxi, is that they're backwards. Funny enough, though, and I was super surprised by this. I was actually talking about this with my oldest daughter last week. And she was like, I would never get into a robo taxi. And I'm like, really? Why? And she's like, well, that's creepy. That doesn't feel safe, this and that. I was super surprised. But I bet her. I said, I'm willing to bet you once you try it, you don't go back. So we'll see.
I mean, that's the challenge of all vehicles going forward. Because even the ones, the newer cars that you have to pay subscriptions, like you don't own the licenses, they can turn your vehicle off at any time. If you're a recognized criminal that is not convicted, and the robo taxi mistakes you for someone else because it's a higher probability, does it just take you straight to jail and say, hey, you're wanted?
So imagine this. I didn't know that. I had dinner with a friend of mine I hadn't seen in a while last week. And he had bought a Tesla, and I don't follow Teslas that much, other than the general news. But he was actually saying, so he was like, "Oh yeah, I used the self-drive all the way over here from my house to the restaurant. It was gold, like half an hour. It was perfect." And he was like, "It's so good." But apparently now Tesla, and I didn't, maybe this is, someone in the comments can say maybe it's been going on for a while, but apparently like there's a camera that's recording you as the driver, and it's actually evaluating you, and you can get strikes. So like if it thinks you look down and you're not supervising the vehicle, it'll kind of give you a warning. If it really has to stern you. It's going to shut off and say, okay, now you have to take over, and you get a strike. And if you get a certain amount of strikes, it'll start to kick you off for like a week at a time. Like imagine the car is starting to be like, no, you're too you're too irresponsible. You can't use the self-drive because you can't stay looking straight at the road. I thought that was hilarious. But anyways, like I said, maybe it's been there for a while.
And I don't know. I'm lost. I'm not going to even add those comments to these words because I'm just lost for words on that.
As Matt's worried about like someone creepily like tapping into his web camera with his lens cap on. We got like Teslas watching every driver every minute of the time they're in the wheel.
When do you own something that you buy anything anymore? Like when do you own something now? Like soon enough you're going to buy a cell phone. It's not really your ownership of the data that's on there. It's going to be like, well, technically you're using our service, so you don't own on any of the data, which for the most part it already is. But like it's getting worse and worse. Like we're getting to a point where they know everything about you.
Mm-hmm. Actually, and imagine the type of information that even Tesla could potentially pick up, like by anyways, there's a whole trove. This is like a rabbit hole, but like anyways,
what was the last comment? What was the whole thing about a couple years ago? They found vacuum cleaners that were sending
the little
back to China to what was being recorded and heard inside of your own house. Same as TVs were, for the longest time that they were using all TVs have the technology to use the speakers as a microphone or to project sound. So they're constantly listening. Your Alexa is always constantly listening. Your Google Home, your phone's always constantly listening. You don't believe it.
The phone is obvious. Facebook doesn't even try to hide the fact that they're listening.
We're not listening. Do you like this car?
It's like you guys were just talking about like, astronauts and stuff. I'm not listening. And then next thing you see is like this little like dude come by. Like, anyways.
On that note. We're going to see you guys next week. As always, Thanks for joining us. Good morning to everybody. We didn't say that. Good morning to everybody. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all the supporters. We'll see you guys same channel, same everything. We're not on holidays.
Back to business.
Back to business. Apparently, John's working on a guest. We're going to have a guest soon.
So we might have a special episode even drop. We'll see when that comes down.
Ooh, we're getting into special stuff now. John's working hard on this stuff now. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. Catch you guys next week.